Greetings and welcome. Thank you for joining me this evening. If you've been following Havok Publishing on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, you know that it's been 3 months since I introduced the relaunch of our publishing company. And it's been busy. We've closed submissions to our January stories. We've opened submissions to our February and March. And the stories are flowing in. Not only that, but we've sold dozens of these t-shirts that are helping fund our first anthology that we're going to publish in July. You can go on our website, gohavok.com, and check these out if you want to help support us. Or you can, again, just follow us on one of our social media accounts or go to our website and see more what we're about. But tonight I want to do something different. I want to read a story to you guys that I wrote a few years ago that helps give a little bit of Christmas cheer in a way that most of the time you don't imagine it. So sit back, relax, listen to my story that can be found in this giant leather-bound book. Not really, I just put it in here to make it look cooler. Sit back, relax, enjoy it, and hopefully you get a little bit of the holiday magic that I'm talking about. The Christmas Nail by Andrew Winch. Jake hopped over the threshold and turned to wave goodbye to his friends still on the bus. He held up a red paper heart bigger than his head and smiled at me. "It's from my secret admirer," he squeaked as a frigid gust blew through the open front door. I sat down the stack of laundry and shuffled over to close the door behind him. "What did I tell you about closing the door?" He smiled, dropped his backpack on the steps, and ran into the living room, kicking a ball into the air as he went. It bounced off the coffee table and nearly knocked over his glass, still from breakfast. "Katie drew a fat baby on my homework and said he was gonna shoot me with a row." "Mommy, what's a row?" I sighed, picked up the ball on the glass, and forced a smile. "An arrow." His face lit up. "Oh!" He turned and pointed up at the little nail wedged into the door frame, going from the living room into the dining room. "Like that?" "Something like that," I said as I left to put the glass in the kitchen. "So does that mean it's time?" His voice held excitement and wonder only known to a 5-year-old. "No, Jakey, not yet." Jake ran through the front door, dropped his Sunday school papers on the floor, and plowed through the hardwood into the living room. He dropped his knees next to his Easter basket and tore into a chocolate egg. Giggling with a mouthful of nougat, he hopped in a never-ending circle. "What's gotten into you?" I asked. "I'm the Easter Bunny." He hopped and stared at the nail just above the door going into the dining room. "Miss Nettles says Jesus has nails in his hands before he died and came back alive. Does that mean it's time?" He hopped in place, licking caramel off his lips. His wide, chocolate brown eyes gleamed as he looked at me. I tousled his curly brown hair. "No, Jakey, not yet." He returned to his Easter basket, but the excitement had drained from his hops. Jake stood in the doorway holding a sparkler, waving it overhead like a magic wand. "What did I tell you about fireworks inside?" I ran to the door and guided his hand away from the wood. "You'll burn the house down." He stood there a moment, dirt smeared across his little overalls and sweat matting his hair. Then, as if I'd just told some hilarious joke, he burst out laughing and threw the burned-out sparkler into the yard where I could run it over with a lawnmower later. He tottered back and forth as he walked like a little Frankenstein's monster into the foyer and then into the living room. Each heavy step knocked off a bit of dirt onto the floor as he went. "Did you tell Tommy's parents thank you for letting you use their fireworks?" "Yep." He continued to march back and forth between the couch and the dining room. "Tommy's dad said America was built by Ben Franklin and George Washington. Said they did it with sweat and hard work, one nail at a..." "Mommy, does that mean it's time?" He hopped on his tiptoes and pressed his dirty hands together. I barely looked up as I guided my mop along the dirt trail. "No, Jakey, not yet." "Gobble!" Jake burst in the front door, flapping his arms, a wave of leaves trailing behind him as he scattered across the room. "Gobble, gobble, gobble!" He slammed the door and tore through the room like a turkey with his head cut off. "Jacob Henry," I said in my best attempt at a stern voice, but I couldn't help laughing as my 6-year-old's wild imagination and endless energy. "What has gotten into you?" "Tommy's trying to shoot me." "He's trying to what?" I lifted the blinds and stared out the fingerprint-covered window. "He's a pilgrim, and he's hunting me. Says he's gonna pluck me bare and nail my head to the tree." He stopped and smiled. A little giggle escaped his lips as he glanced up at the nail. "Does that mean..." "Nice try, little turkey." I crouched and pulled him in for a hug, but not yet. Jake's squeal just outside the front door reminded me that he'd been out in the snow for nearly an hour. I cracked open the door and squeezed my head out. "Come on, buddy, time for lunch." Seconds later, when he was leaving a trail of melted snow from the living room to the kitchen, the bar stool slid sideways and nearly toppled over as he hopped up on it. I opened my mouth to remind him to pray first, but his hands were already folded with his head bowed. A wave of pride relaxed my aching body, and for a moment, all the cleaning, cooking, lecturing, and everything else seemed completely worth it. After devouring his chicken soup and hot cocoa, he clopped back into the living room and turned the front door, but before he could make an escape, I called to him. "Hey, Jakey, know what time it is?" He stared at me with his head cocked. With a half-open mouth, he betrayed a hint of a grin. I glanced up at the nail and smiled. He followed my gaze, then gasped. "Mommy, you serious?" He clomped over to the nail until he was staring straight up. He grinned wide by the second. He stumbled backward, then looked up at me. In the quietest whisper I'd ever heard him use, he said, "It's time." Before the sunset, Christmas trees and elves on shelves decorated every corner, while cinnamon, spice, and Bing Crosby filled the air. Jake danced and hung ornaments until he collapsed on the couch and fell asleep with his head in my lap. And there, hanging from the little nail that had waited all year, was a strand of silver garland lined with twinkling lights. I hope you all enjoy my story. It's silly, but it does help give you an idea of what I think of whenever it comes to the Christmas season. So again, thank you from all of us at Havok Publishing. If you do want to support us, go on, check out the t-shirts at gohavok.com. Send us your own story. Let us know how you celebrate Christmas and Easter and 4th of July and Thanksgiving. And from my family to yours, have a Merry Christmas.